Check.
There's a little thing here you can stand your phone up in. Yeah.
Okay, we
are almost on.
all right. I believe we are on.
You think?
Got my mojo working, babe.
Let's see.
What happened?
Hold on. This is the test.
This is a test. This is the Counselor Curtis curse.
Okay, it's working.
Okay, so are we on? Yes.
Okay, it's working. Yes.
Okay, good. Jimmy Doane Show. Streaming live.
That's right.
Probably warts and all. No editing in this, by God. It's
Oh no, this is live television,
live, you know,
so to speak.
sort of, yeah. So another edition of the Jimmy Doane Show here. Jimmy Doane right here, along with Counselor Curtis.
Oh,
He's all dressed up. Looks like he's ready to give some legal advice today. Today is Thursday the 15th of September 2016. And I've kind of perused through some of the news du jour, and I was thinking I found a couple of things that kind of caught my eye. But it turns out that most of the news is international.
okay.
But it does pertain to us somewhat, and I think it's kind of interesting to watch, or to listen to, or to read the different takes on the same piece of news. The one in mind that I have in mind here is that Israel. The big deal was yesterday. They inked a deal where Israel gets $38 billion in military gift, they call it, from the U.S. $38 billion. Now that's over 10 years, so it's $3.8 billion to Israel, and there is amazing the difference in between who wants it and who's against it and who's for it.
Okay.
Obviously, Rice, whatever her name is,
Susan Rice.
Susan Rice. She wrote it, and I'll get into that here in a minute. She wrote a big thing, said this is the best thing that ever happened between us, friends forever.
Of course.
Then I read the Al Jazeera op-ed piece, and of course, needless to say, they made some points that maybe people here in this country would be uncomfortable with. But the main thing is, and anybody that knows this, they mentioned it, of course, in the Susan Rice thing. But let me just get started with the first article. It says here, this has a picture of the jet fighter. You know, that they sell. This is one of many things that they do sell. After months of negotiating, now you wonder what was involved in this negotiation. The United States and Israel have signed a huge $38 billion deal for military aid to the Jewish state, and some changes from previous pacts between the countries. Now, of course, you wonder, months of negotiations, that's number one.
Yeah, but how many meetings is that? 3?
I suppose it could be, but I mean, you know, there's always the backroom people that are working up their end of the deal.
Right.
And it would be interesting to see how big it is. You know, if it's 500 pages or
Right.
whatever it is. But it's a 10-year agreement. Now, what happens is they call it $38 billion, but again, over 10 years.
Right.
$3.8 billion is not even a rounding error in our budget. I mean, I don't know what it is, but
significant to be given away.
Well, again, interestingly enough, because that's one of the big complaints. It's expected to be used to upgrade Israel's Air Force to Lockheed Martin's F-35, which are our most advanced warplanes. So really, instead of just giving the money to Lockheed Martin and taking delivery, we give the money to Israel. They rake off whatever they want to, and then
buy stuff
from us, right? And of course, that was one of the things that in the past, it says here, the percentage of stuff that could only be spent on internal Israel stuff was 26%. That's going away this time. That is to say, all of the money that we give them has to basically be spent internationally, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, in the United States.
Oh, right.
Tanks, guns, and everything else. Yeah, I mean, spare parts, the whole deal.
Right.
So for the first 5 years, I guess they still get to spend it on something they make into. They have an industry. They have a pretty good industry as it is. The Uzis and stuff like that. I mean, they make some weapons. Anyway, so that as I say, most importantly, it's structured so that most of that money goes back to U.S.
Wait, are you saying this is about the money and not just Israeli security?
In fact, it's interesting. You should mention that because, as you would expect, and we can get into this a little
Don't
bit more.
Don't they need our help to be secure?
Again, you have asked the brilliant question, my friend, young Padawan. The deal is no, they don't. And of course, that's what the thing is. You wonder who. These are obviously, how can I put this? This is where very few people get a whole bunch of money for pushing this thing through.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's
Susan Rice get to pat themselves on the back, get a plaque for supporting Israel.
Exactly. And turns out that the Israeli lobby, as far as foreign aid is concerned,
they get plaques too.
Well, they get the Israelis as a country get more than like the next 3 or 4 countries combined as far as giving out aid.
Yeah, we give out.
And this, of course, was for their defense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, what happened was several years ago, Israel signed peace agreements with Egypt and somebody else, whoever's in the Sinai. I mean, they don't have to worry about them anymore, supposedly, if you get my drift. Well, no. I mean, they now have a peace agreement. Now you technically could say we don't have to worry about Egypt. We don't need those planes, but they're going to take them anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Egypt has been instrumental in the wars against Israel. I mean, I could see if I were Israel
every time, of course.
Yeah, but still, they're out there. They're mortal enemies, and Israel is surrounded by them. But they've got nukes,
right? Well,
they know how to use them.
This is the whole thing about it. And of course, I think, according to this article, they're going to be the only. At least so far, the only foreigners that are going to be entitled for this F-35, which is our latest and greatest. Yeah, a slight cost overrun, but other than that. So, anyways, sources on Capitol Hill acknowledged that of the agreement said that the deal states that Israel cannot lobby Congress for more money unless a war breaks out. Now, what constitutes a war these days?
We announce it.
Exactly. We've been attacked.
Well, they get attacked all the time.
Oh, I know they do, from Palestine or something like that. Do you have the map up there?
I've got one right here.
I thought that was a great map. I don't want to be in the way, but I thought it was a great map that broke out where everything is, so to speak.
Yeah.
And and can't use any of the also you can't use any of the U.S. funds for fuel. So, meaning more of the aid comes back to U.S. manufacturers.
Right.
So anyway, they're talking about the last 10 years. Apparently, it was a $3 billion, and now it's $3.8 billion over 10 years.
Right.
The last decade.
Well, yeah.
So now, what's interesting is here's the statement from Susan Rice. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's some salient points, and this is how great it is. For as long as the state of Israel has existed, which is like since 1947, the United States has been Israel's greatest friend and partner. Since the day he took office, President Obama has consistently provided Israel with all the support, and over the past 8 years, the United States has provided Israel with almost $24 billion in military aid, and we've invested. Of course, they never spend; it's always an investment. Over $3 billion in the Iron Dome and other missile defense technologies, and have saved countless Israeli lives. Countless. I'll bet they could count them if they wanted to. And well, of course, that doesn't include. I had another picture of when they go into Palestine or wherever they go over there and bomb the crap out of somebody because those guys are firing missiles back at Israel. and
the Gaza Strip and
yeah,
West
right.
Bank.
But that's what that map is all about.
Yeah.
I never have figured out the map.
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah, no, I'm going to have to go take a closer look at it. But that's,
The important part about it is that the Palestinians are on two sides of Israel. They're both in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip.
okay.
And the other important part, and so that's the big deal, is that they have to cross through Israel to see like their family members and stuff. So that's the first big deal. And the second big deal is that Jerusalem and the West Bank is all divided up.
Right.
And has been, they've tried to partition it several
5,000 years it's been divided up.
Well, right. Well, it's the hub of
Egyptians.
three different religions.
Right, exactly.
And somehow they have managed to share with violence that particularly cursed piece of earth. But the point is that the Palestinians don't have any apparent authority. They have nobody to complain to because the Israelis have basically taken control of the West Bank, despite the agreements that we've tried to make.
Yeah, I know that. I was going to talk a little bit here about more pieces. Didn't they have one with Carter or something?
They've had
Norway.
they've had great
Oslo.
partitions of the Section A, Section B, Section C of the.
Why? Is that
Well,
of course,
what
I
do you
guess
mean
that's
why?
what they go. Well, I mean, the whole thing to me, just looking at it, seems so silly in a way. When you're, this constant fighting on your border reminds me a little bit of that one of the original Star Treks, where the people would walk into the little disintegration chambers every time there was a
Well, it's more distinct than that from my
Okay.
perspective.
Okay.
I mean, what happened was Israel was given some area, obviously, after World War II, and but what happened was they moved into a little bit more than they were supposed to.
Oh, I
and
didn't
that
know that.
really upset the Palestinians. And they rioted and such, and then Israel just said, "Okay, you know what? We're just doing whatever we want at this
Okay.
point." And then the wars were launched, and of course Israel, like you said, kicked butt.
Yeah.
And so they're in control of the area, and so what you have is a population of 3 million people, the Palestinians, who don't have a government. And
well, that's what Hamas and those people.
well, exactly. Those are the groups that Hezbollah and Hamas, the groups that have sprung up to try to lead Palestine. But the problem is that without any apparent authority to govern themselves, it's easy to gin up the public against the Israelis.
Well, let me ask you a question. Wasn't Yasser Arafat involved in all this?
Yeah.
Wasn't he a Palestinian
Yeah,
or something?
he was
okay,
PLO.
but he was a titular head or something like that?
No, he was a real. He started off as a terrorist. Olympic
Right.
bombing and every Olympic
why I got the Peace
hostages
Prize.
and stuff. Well, right, yeah.
Yeah, he got the Peace Prize.
Well, that was, I think, for signing the deal with.
Could have been, whatever.
Yeah, I mean Clinton, and they've got, like I said, good deals have been signed in the past. The problem is that they've never allowed the Palestinians to sort of have their Declaration of Independence moment when they
So
say
now, don't they have a representative in the UN or not?
Palestine. I think now, yeah,
I think so. But
yeah, but
where
it
has
doesn't matter.
That
They-
guy selected, I wonder, a girl.
They don't have any powers. What it comes down to is they feel like they are an
Prisoners.
occupied.
An
Exactly.
occupied. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just reminds me a little bit, although it's interesting how the difference. When the Berlin Wall went up, in order to visit your relatives in East Berlin, if you were in Berlin, you had to get special dispensation to go through East Germany.
Right.
Basically, is what it was.
And that's kind of the thing in terms of passing through Israel here.
Yeah.
But what their big problem is that they're giving the Palestinians a target. They are by being the occupying territory, by being the occupying army there, they're removing any pretense of the Palestinians being governed by themselves, even though they are sort of on paper. So it's easy for the Palestinians to be pissed off because they don't feel like they have any. There's no way they can vote themselves more of anything or
Right.
do any. They don't
Because
have
they're not sovereign.
Exactly, that's what I'm
Not
getting at.
sovereign.
Without the sovereignty, the 3 million people are easy to rile up.
Yeah,
because
sure.
you just say, "What? It's Israel's fault. There they are, right? They're the soldiers right there, and they just bulldozed your house."
I got the solution to this. I don't understand. All you do is you go over to the Arabia place or over there on the other side, completely on the east of Israel, and you carve out an area and call it Palestine.
Well, exactly,
And move all the 3 million over there.
Well, and they sort of did that, but they didn't do it, the last part, what you just said, which is
to move them.
exactly
Right.
what you do if you're Israel and you want to occupy.
You have the Trail of Tears, okay?
Exactly. You march them across.
March them across.
Get the hell out, or we will kill you all.
So that's it.
And you put them over in the West Bank, or the Gaza Strip is what you do. You take Jerusalem, and you'd say, if you're not Jewish, get out of Jerusalem. You have 24 hours.
That's why I call it Jerusalem.
That's right. And man, we are taking over. Maybe some of you Christians can stay,
Sure.
but everybody who's not Jew, basically, and not a member of Israel will now leave, and you kick them out into Jordan, into Syria, the Golan Heights, wherever.
There's a lot of vacant land over there. I mean, there's tons.
Yeah.
And then you're done.
There you go.
You got your own little country, and you can make it a
Exactly.
little bit bigger. What are they going to do with all that arid land anyway? The fact is, when Israel moved in there, it was pretty well barren.
Right.
They wasn't given
Israel's done an amazing
Amazing
job
job.
of constructing.
what we call terraforming.
Man, I
It's
mean,
like they moved onto
kicked
Mars
ass.
and
Yeah.
and terraformed it.
Yeah, and so there's a great model there if anybody wants to follow it,
Sure.
which they won't because they're Muslims and have a different culture entirely. But still, maybe right there, if you gave them the little Gaza Strip there, they could trade with Israel. That would continue to build up over time.
I'm sure it would. I mean,
But you have to give them apparent authority.
I agree.
Or
it
you're
seems
going to
be
get
easy enough to
rebellion
do is
in perpetuity.
and what you then, if you want to, of course, you can do the Trump solution and you can build the wall
Yeah.
over there. So they're walled off over there in the east.
Right, and they've sort of done that.
I know they have. I know they have. But I'm just saying, if you got on two sides, this is I won't. It's not even an accident. It's a deliberate action waiting to have an accident or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
it totally is. Well, I don't know why
This is a Rube Goldberg.
The Jews have not quite grasped the concept. I guess they just think if they'll really piss everybody off if they take up.
So what?
I know, that's what I was saying. That's what I say, man. Look, you want it, you're there, you have control, take the place, kick the other guys out, give them their spot, just like you said, this is yours, that's ours, it's over, draw the line, and be done.
Yeah.
And otherwise, it's war in perpetuity.
Yeah, you don't want that. I mean, that's got to be, as we've seen in this country, it's a big drain on our economy. The war. I think we mentioned this yesterday that the war has cost almost $5 trillion. Just our wars over there, in the Middle East.
Right.
This is for the $3
Iraq
billion.
and Afghanistan.
Right, but I'm saying that the planes that brought down the towers.
Yeah.
And we lost 2,800 people and $3 or $4 billion, and now it's gone way beyond that. We're going to show them, by God, by going bankrupt. This is what you call a Pyrrhic victory, if there ever was one. So anyway, let me just finish here with what Susan had to say. So it marks a significant increase over our existing funding and will ensure that Israel has the support it needs to defend itself. By itself and to preserve. Of course, it's not exactly defending itself by itself if we're giving them all the money and the planes.
Right.
Preserve it and preserve.
What
it.
a joke! I mean, you nailed it. This is a payoff to our MIC if there ever was one. Here's some money for you guys, and by the way, here's where you can spend it.
Yeah. So anyway, she talks on about the. Greatly increased military assistance commitment. This is not an accident. It's a reminder of the United States' unshakable commitment to Israel's security. The word security through this thing is like almost every other word.
Sure.
That's the basis for this.
That's what we hang our hat on.
Well, that's the substantial, and it will also enable Israel to substantially enhance the mobility of its ground forces. Now you got to ask yourself, in a country that size, why do you have to have the mobility of your ground forces unless it's an attack type thing? I mean, really, that it's blitzkrieg. I mean, I guess.
Yeah,
No, it just makes no sense.
Well, yeah, that's just a.
So
thing
it says,
that they
as
say.
Israel continues to face the threat of rocket fire, this funding will help Israel to strengthen their missile defense systems like the Iron Dome.
Yeah.
And breed greater security for Israel. That's why we worked with our international partners to achieve an Iran nuclear deal that has closed off every one of Iran's paths to obtaining a nuclear weapon, which of course that door is wide open, and we'll continue to vigorously enforce. We're going to vigorously enforce the deal we have with Iran, which of course so far has gone away. And we will continue to press for a resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. 2 states for 2 peoples, each side living in peace and security. Yeah, well, how's that been working out for you for the last 30 years?
Yeah, well, so far, swing and a miss. But like we said, they just haven't tried the solution that we just outlined,
Right.
which.
We know what we're
At
doing.
some point, yeah, exactly. At some point, it's coming to that.
Well, of course, what's interesting, she says that our security here,
Our security.
and theirs is linked.
Yeah.
When allies, partners we're more secure. We are more secure because
Of course.
because they're going to buy our planes, and of course we'll be able to buy the more advanced capabilities produced by the United. Here it comes, right towards the end, by the United States, which will support American jobs, like so many aspects of the Israeli relationship. They call it a moo, whatever, I forget, is a win-win. Well, not so much. Not so much for the taxpayer, of course. And I realize it's a rounding error and all that stuff, but
Like you said, I mean, it's not insignificant rounding error. I mean, $3 billion, that's almost 1%. That's 0.5% of our military budget. And
Okay.
So, I mean,
I didn't do the calculation, but yeah, okay. Of course, it's an addition too, but yeah, you're right. At any rate, it's going to be interesting. So then, of course, we find out, and this is the telling part. This is a columnist that's kind of extensive. I don't want to go through the whole thing.
Okay.
But I did yellow line some pieces. This is the Al Jazeera response. This is written by Marwan Bishra, as a senior political analyst at Al Jazeera. So you know where this is coming from. I don't have to. And of course, the picture they show here is one of
The bulldozed house.
well, it's the one that's bombed out.
Oh, okay.
That's in Palestine.
Yeah, you wish it was a bulldozer.
Yeah, right. No, that's the bulldozer got bulldozed or
Right.
bombed or whatever. Yeah. Israel is the largest cumulative recipient of United States foreign assistance since World War II, and this week it received the largest military package ever signed between 2 countries. And that begs the question: why does Israel, whose per capita income is among the world's top 20, receive tens of billions of dollars in military support?
What?
Yeah. So the 2 parties understand. Let's see. They go
Because
through
it's
here.
critical for their security and ours.
Right. And so if you have any doubts, the 2 parties underline their commitments to the peace process.
Sure.
But
yeah, this is all about
The
peace.
historic record tells an entirely different story.
Yeah.
Now we get the other side of it.
Look, this is about the baby children in Israel.
No, they didn't get into the children. I was surprised. So anyway, the first fallacy contends that it's a win-win deal for Israel and the United States. This is rich, coming from the pro-Israel lobby that ensured the transfer of funds of hundreds of billions of dollars to Israel, both in government and tax-exempt donations. So when you make a charity donation, it's tax-exempt. Let's not talk about how Israel is buying U.S. arms with U.S. money, which is beneficial to Americans. That's just silly repetition of the White House talking points. Since the end of the Cold War, and this is interesting, here's the money start-off capital thing that should have been in capital F. Since the end of the Cold War, which was in 91, I guess was the end of the Cold War, 89 to 91, Israel has been no tangible strategic benefit to Washington. When we go into the Mideast and everything, you don't see a lot of Israeli soldiers in there fighting anything. Number one, but since the end of the Cold War, once strategic an asset has now become a burden, even a nuisance. This is lame at best. The military assistance have been using military assistance to preserve and defend its occupation, not its security. That is to say, it's defending. It's using this money to
Expand its territory.
well, not expand, but make sure the Palestinians are kept under control.
Right. Well, yeah, that's...
And remember, Hamas and Hezbollah are the result, not the triggers, of Israeli occupation of Palestine and Lebanon. which I thought was kind of interesting.
They
weren't there. It's kind of the same thing
Well,
with ISIS.
they're the de facto government. They're the government that sprang up because Palestine didn't have an actual government, and that's what we're pointing out is if you would allow them to at least have the veneer of an actual government that they could vote for and petition for redress of grievances
Right.
and that then they could at least try to focus their attention off of Israel as captors and occupiers and complain to their own folks.
Right.
But
And that's really the way it has to be.
yeah, it has to be that way. And until they get over
And
to
I
that,
just-
you're going to get Hamas and Hezbollah and
Well, as I say, the same thing we have with
ISIS,
ISIS and what was the one before that? The
Al Qaeda.
Al Qaeda. I mean, those guys sprung up after the vacuum, when the vacuum was made, and there were no leaders after we took away the tin pot dictators. But guess what? A vacuum of nature abhors a vacuum,
Right.
and so that's why those guys are on and continuing, and the unrest has been unbelievable. This is our idea of exporting democracy to the rest of the world. So anyway, paradoxically, after Israel signed separate peace agreements I just talked about with Jordan and Egypt, its chief Arab rival, the U.S. provided Israel with more, not less, military assistance. Israel's latest justification being that they need to fight against the Islamic Republic, which of course is interesting that they would call it a republic. They always do. Every time I see the republic in a name, you're thinking, this is not good. So anyway, the Iran nuclear deal, but Iran was totally drained in the 1980s against Iraq, and I remember that was when Iraq and Iran were fighting each other. They both bled each other to death. And of course the nuclear, we all know that Israel, well, they never admit it, but we know they have nukes.
Right.
So, and we know that because of because Clear and Present Danger, the documentary with Harrison.
Oh, right.
Was that Harrison Ford or who was? No, what? It was.
Is that Alec Baldwin?
It might have been Alec Baldwin. It was the. No, that was the. No, that might have been the Peacemaker. Let me think. No, the Peacemaker was. No, but the Clear and Present Danger was where they found the nuke bomb from an Israeli plane crash that had gotten lost, and they put it in a cigarette machine and blew up, nuked Baltimore Stadium when the ball game was being played.
Oh, okay.
You didn't see that one? That was kind of cute. Morgan Freeman was in it. Yeah.
Okay.
He's always good. Not too much on his politics, but anyway, see. So anyway, it happens to be a closet nuclear power. Why then augment the military assistance? The same goes for the Islamic State of Iraq and ISIS, which, like Iran, never actually attacked Israel. I mean, they considered a threat, but for some reason, nobody's ever attacked, and they'd be foolish to do that. I mean, the Israelis would, and they got to know that.
Yeah.
But so, what is the security of which you speak? We have a record, a 30, 40, 50-year record of repelling overwhelming odds.
That's just the bait. That's just the talking point. That's just that we get to say we helped.
Well, as I say, Lockheed must be happy as a clam.
Oh, they're loving it.
The peace process, which was devised by the U.S. to bring peace to the Holy Land a quarter of a century ago, 25 years ago, they had a peace process. Well, how's that working out for you? But the record shows that the more, and this is interesting, the record shows that the more Washington millerized and empowered Israel against its Arab neighbors, the less prone it has been to making compromises. Because they have, why do you make a compromise if you happen to be the big dog in the neighborhood? If you're the one with the nukes and all the army, and somebody says, well, we'd like to compromise on your taking our land, and Israel can say,
well,
you.
Like we've talked about just now, a compromise is not a solution in this case. They need to move forward and take the property,
sever everything,
exactly.
Start over.
And this compromise business is just wishy-washy, nothing burger, kumbaya with these two groups that are mortal enemies. So or at least at each other's throats right now. So
now as I say, it's the old adage also. They've got this captive population for some reason that apparently can't do much, and as we've always said in the past, if goods don't cross borders, then soldiers will. Well, if you basically free the Palestinians on their own land, get them away, essentially, then they could go do whatever they want.
Well, exactly.
And they could set up a business and have a free market thing if they want.
They could have their own state. There's millions of them. It's like there's plenty of people. They've got resources, whatever, support worldwide. Now they probably got contacts from all over the Arab world because of the ongoing conflict in there. And you see so many people have fed the Palestinians weapons and stuff to try to get them, because they're on the front lines down there with Israel. So use them as your cannon fodder there.
That's what you love about proxy wars is, it lets you and him fight, we'll watch.
Right, and here's some weapons.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, he has, they go on indeed, Netanyahu is the embodiment of the phrase, with friends like these, who needs enemies? He has meddled, now talk about this, he has meddled in the U.S. elections, practically campaigned against President Barack Obama in 2012. They're worried about the Russians, they claim that the Russians are trying to influence by releasing the emails or whatever, and of course, no matter what email comes out, no matter how innocuous, the new ones with from Colin Powell, for instance, the emails and so forth. Russia did it. It's the Russian thing and so forth. But I mean, the point is that you talk about the guy addressed a joint session of Congress, for God's sake.
Speech, though. I mean, it's one thing to make a speech, another thing to steal a whole bunch of emails. I mean, it is. They broke into the computer system, if you believe them, and they've got the goods, so to speak. We'll find out.
I can tell you this much: that more and more people are coming to the conclusion that it was an inside job. Mm-hmm. That somebody in the know in Washington, Pentagon, or something like that was actually the leaker. Mm-hmm. So that didn't go through Russia. So anyway, whatever. So the thing is let me just see here where this starts here. This is a run-on sentence, and it's rather disingenuous to claim that assisting Israel, despite its intransigence, shows maturity in separating Obama-Netanyahu political differences from the U.S.-Israel strategic commitment. In reality, the deal rewards Israel for its intransigence and empowers Netanyahu and the Israeli to further militarize. So the point being that from Al Jazeera's point is this is lose-lose unless you happen to be Lockheed Martin or somebody, or or be able to wave the flag and say.
Well, that's because they don't want the solution that we outlined, which is, I mean, they all still imagine somehow that there's going to be more Palestinian control in Jerusalem and in the West Bank, and then they'll have, I don't know, two Palestinian states, and I know they haven't thought it through all the way. They just haven't thought it through all the way.
What are they doing with all these talks, though? I mean, you got to fight. The guy Kerry flies over there on Air Force 3 or something, and lands, and we're going to do talks, and they have the photo op, and they huddle for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, and then he hops the plane again, and goes up to some other place and huddles for 3 or 4 hours or something, and then.
Our guys like to maintain this image that we're neutral, that we're that we support the Palestinians and their situation, but we also support the Israelis, and yet we're going to keep our hands off the situation, and we just keep wagging our finger every time Israel expands a little bit and builds a new settlement on land that was previously designated to be Palestinian. And so that's what they talk about in the intransigence and stuff, and now they've colonized this whole big area. A couple 100,000 Israelis live in this place that was supposed to go to Palestine.
Disputed area.
It wasn't disputed. It was clearly the other guys. Yeah. And that's the thing is that...
And all we did was a finger wag and give them $3 billion.
Well, exactly. Because we want to be on their side, but we also want to appear like we're good and neutral on the others, like I said.
Like the Camp David thing where that was Egypt that was Egypt and Israel. That was years ago. The Camp David Accord.
Nasser, yeah.
No, it was after Nasser. It was the other guy, the other one that was assassinated.
Okay, so anyway, nobody's going to come out and say what we just said, which is,
it makes sense.
It does.
That's the problem. It makes sense.
Well, it would solve the problem, and it would suck for all the Palestinians who live in the West Bank. Because
they're under threat of being bombed every day.
I
mean, you're afraid to go shopping, for God's sakes. Are you kidding me? I don't understand why you wouldn't race get all your crap together and race over to this new land.
Well, because it's Jerusalem. It's the heart of their religion. It's their
But
holiest
where is
place.
Jerusalem exactly in the scheme of things?
It's right in the middle of the West Bank, and it's right in the middle of both the Palestinian and the Israeli land. It's like split right there. I mean, it's
So what's
it
the
makes
problem?
the problem is what we just said, which is that if Israel were to occupy for real the territory that it should take because it has the power and the people.
Oh, okay. That means take all of Jerusalem.
Exactly.
Okay, so Jerusalem is over towards the West Bank area.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, then
So-
they would be cut off. Well, of course, I guess what you could do is what they did in Berlin.
Well, that's what they almost have. It makes Berlin look like a nice, happy place.
Well,
After,
it was actually.
Well, I mean, after the split,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
even so, it's like
They build They can build a lane into Jerusalem from the east,
Right,
where,
well-
where the new country is,
Right.
and then they have free reign on this thing to Jerusalem.
well, if you say so. I mean, I wouldn't even go that far. I would just say, look, man, you don't know how long your nation's going to last. 300, 400, 500 years. Right now, Israel's got it. Okay, they've got it. Yeah, and so let them. They should just take that.
Well, how
whole-
much of Jerusalem is do the Jews claim? All of it?
No, I think it's supposed to be like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Okay. Well, then easy peasy. I don't understand what the problem is here.
Just build.
You
big
move
tile.
it.
Yeah, right.
You move it. Look. They moved the damn London Bridge, for God's sakes, to Arizona.
Yeah. uh-huh.
So what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's you just carve off the part that's
like
yours,
Yeah.
and you number the bricks.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. You have to you take a few shots and everything, and you take that third and you just move it over there into your new Palestinian. What?
Yeah. No,
You don't think?
No, not even.
You
No,
have
not
no
that.
imagination.
No Great Wall of China pie split up or anything. No. It's just somebody has to be in charge of every place.
I just think that what they could do, of course, is to make a replica over there and the new
Build them
Palestine.
like a little mini Disney Jerusalem over
Yeah,
there
well,
in
it'd
the
have to be- it'd
Gaza
have to be-
Strip.
I would say
Here's yours.
Yeah, here's yours. Well, for instance, I don't know if you noticed this, but there is in the Seine River in Paris. There's a miniature Statue of Liberty.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, and of course this is a big one. It's here, so no problem. Here we're going to build you a Jerusalem right here.
Right,
for you,
right.
Take it.
Yeah, you just kind of carve one out of the desert for them.
Yeah.
And you say this is the and then
It's very holy. We've taken a sacred brick from the old one.
That's right.
And we've
Put it over
now we've
there.
blessed this one.
That's right. It's been
whatever you
totally-
do.
That's
and,
right.
put the Star of Muhammad on there or whatever you do. Mm-hmm. Okay, well I'm done with that.
star.
Problem solved.
I got my mojo working.
And we're back.
And we're back. Jimmy Doane Show here once again, the 4:00 show. This is Thursday. On Facebook and everything, put it in there. TBT, Throwback Thursday. They put old pictures of themselves on there.
Right.
So I didn't do that today.
Here's pictures of our old selves. Right?
Yeah. Well, I had one of you boys in front of that little biplane. When you were like
Right.
8.
Yeah.
So I'd throw that up there. Well, anyway, the next story is also an international story, and I have to laugh whenever I see this. This is called Top Diplomats. Top diplomats from U.S., Japan, and South Korea. And I love this picture that, Kerry is sitting there with his hands crossed like this, shaking the hand of the Japanese guy in the South. And they're going to discuss the North Korean business. The three countries are pushing through tough new UN Security Council sanctions on North Korea after the isolated country on Friday conducted its fifth and largest nuclear test. The thing is, they've already got, I don't know what it is, but they're completely walled off as far as the sanctions are concerned. I mean, as far as, that country is so, the people that have smuggled out pictures and gone there, they said it's just, it's fourth world.
Bad shape,
And
yeah.
except for the fact that they obviously reward, there should be a picture there of the missiles.
Yeah.
And,
right behind
so they have enough money to do all that stuff, and that standing army is all there, if you notice.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of people saluting the glorious leader. So the blast was in defiance of UN sanctions that were tightened in March. I don't know how the tourniquet is already shutting off at least any blood from the West. It seems to me. I don't know what they could do next. And of course, one of the big players in this game, as we're going to find out here in just a second, China. Mm-hmm. Notice that China is not in this group that's meeting to talk about North Korea, even though they have a big border with North Korea,
right?
An actual border. Not like, and of course the U.S. I guess has an actual border called the Demilitarized Zone,
right?
And so does South Korea. Although I don't guess South Korea has a border with the North Korea because we have the Demilitarized Zone across there.
Yeah,
I
technically.
don't know what it technically. Anyway, so China North backed the March resolution, which said was more sanctions, but was more resistant to harsh new sanctions. This time, after the United States and South Korea decided to deploy a sophisticated anti-missile system in the South, which they call THAAD or TAD or something like that, some kind of high-altitude defense missile. They're worried that, like it's going to really do anything. So they want to talk about, they want to meet at the they're going to meet, I think, at the UN and discuss what they can do to put further pressure on North Korea. And I fail to see what kind of further pressure the UN can do. I mean, it's just talks. This guy ain't listening. And what's interesting, I think they're a little closer to a nuclear missile capability than Iran is, for instance.
What, the Norks?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
they've exploded a few nuclear bombs.
Yeah.
That's what those earthquakes have been. I mean, they're in the kiloton range.
Well, they're smaller than
nothing
Hiroshima.
hydrogen.
Yeah, no, but they're smaller than Hiroshima, but still a lot of damage.
The last one I read was twice Hiroshima, which is still only 18 kilotons.
Right.
I mean, we're not talking. Yeah, I mean, it's a devastation for a mile or two. I mean, it's big, it's huge. I mean, it's a 600-mile-an-hour wind, the 3,000-degree heat, and the double or triple atmosphere pressure,
And the EMP.
And that
Boy,
too.
you didn't have the EMP in 1945, but I'll tell you,
The damage now would
you can
be...
imagine if you blew one lit one off about 5,000 feet above Seoul.
Mm-hmm. It would not
Excuse
be
me.
pretty. Yeah.
Excuse me. Bye bye. Reminds me of that, which I love, of the John Travolta movie where they stole the
Broken Arrow.
Broken Arrow, one of the great movies. So anyway, Beijing, and of course, which is interesting, China is afraid to cut off all ties and stop trading with North Korea because what they're worried about, it says here, fearing it could collapse. Well, a collapse in North Korea, you don't have any idea what that's going to look like.
Well, one thing we know is when countries that size collapse, so many people go hungry and are in such bad shape that they have no problem being riled up into military conflict.
Well, and think about it.
And
they're all armed.
to eat.
They have a 1 million-man army that is, armed to the teeth, and they got missiles. They got all the stuff that you'd want. And all they have to do is just start. You put 1 million people over the border. Our 25,000 troops ain't going to stop nothing.
No,
And
it'd be up to. We'd have to do a freaking massive new land invasion of South Korea. Yeah, I mean, we'd do it probably.
the idiots.
Well, it would either be us or China would have to do it, and
Well, see, China. Well, here's the deal. If China were to withdraw all their stuff, let's say, and so the regime would, so I guess parts of the regime, or there'd be riots, or I don't know what would happen. But anyway, China's not willing to do that because the flood might be up towards China way.
right. I mean, worst case scenario is like you said, the dude goes crazy, maintains his military control, and starts launching stuff.
Well, think about it. The Second World War was kind of the same thing because we cut off Japan. We had an embargo, and finally the straw that broke the camel's back, I believe, was we cut off scrap steel from Japan. I think we'd already cut off the oil, and then, of course that's why they had to go down into the Dutch East Indies and everything for those oil fields for fuel. But the big deal was, that they considered that cutting off trade like that with us was an act of war, and then the next thing you know, it's Pearl Harbor. So, don't be surprised if China cuts something off like that, that they would take it out on China rather than on South Korea.
Well,
I mean, they try.
yeah, I don't know.
Think about it. Japan was a postage-stampy country that took on Pearl Harbor, took on our fleet.
Well, not really. They had a strong economy and tons of natural resources, and they had
Japan doesn't have natural resource one.
well, yeah,
They got nothing. That was only the islands that they took over some places, but they don't have any natural resources in Japan. I mean, they can grow their own rice, but that's about it.
and they had half as many people as we did, I believe. So, I mean, they weren't an insignificant power at the time.
No, they weren't. Okay, well,
China would be they would be crazy to take on China. I read somewhere that the Norks have enough fissile material to make 20 bombs.
Right. That's what I heard.
And I tried to look into it a little bit.
I wonder, how do they know this?
Yeah, well, that would have to be some kind of top secret information, or just an extrapolation on.
But the thing that's so crazy is, and this has to do with Colin Powell also, is we were the Yellow Cake and weapons of mass destruction, which is why for some reason we decided to go and invade Iraq instead of somebody else. And we were absolutely, and we had inspectors on the ground that went all through to find these WMDs. Okay. And they didn't find anything. The CIA specifically said, I can't find them. But we said, well, they moved them to Syria and we're going to go in anyway. And Colin Powell got up there to the UN and gave this speech, which of course was idiot, that he went and, bought it. And
That was the president knows more than you do speech.
Right. So anyway, here's the deal. That was virtually transparent as glass compared to what we know about North Korea. So how do you know they've got any fissile?
I'm with you. I'm very suspicious of that number they just came up with. I mean, even if they knew how many, my only guess is that we know, for example, they have a few centrifuges that are working, and we can extrapolate how much time it would take them to develop X amount of physical material.
They got to have quite a few of them, and of course you kind of wonder where they got them.
Well, that's my point, is that they could have a lot more than you know about.
They do. They have to have a lot more. Think about it. They had thousands in Iran that weren't producing enough material to do a bomb at that point. So they got to have quite a setup. Again, I don't know exactly what it is.
Well, whatever it is, it's working for them, because they have exploded a couple. Those were not earthquakes.
That was the other thing they said. Of course, you're trying to read the tea leaves here. They sent whatever the guy's name was. Short first name over there to Iraq and Iran or whatever to search for the WMD stuff. It just went through my head. Starts with a D. Anyway, we haven't been able to do that, so we had to read tea leaves. They have seismographs, and they there's a rumbling, and they say looks like maybe 8 or I don't know 18. It's not a high. They're guessing.
Well, I think they can get pretty good with some of those seismographs.
I suppose they can, but they might be able to. But when I was reading the releases of this stuff, it looked like they weren't too sure. One of them, he had claimed to have done an H bomb a few.
Yeah, that
and
no.
they said no.
Yeah.
So then again, that's when everything's open to questions at some point. Anyway, let me continue here because this is just about the end. China and Russia pushed for a resumption of 6-party talks on the denuclearization of North Korea. The talks, which also involve Japan, South Korea, and the United States, have been on hold since 2008. So for 8 years, the 6-party talks, which of course do not include North Korea, have been on hold for an obvious reason. Japanese Prime Minister Abe will seek Cuba's help in responding to North Korea's nuclear and missile programs during a rare visit to Havana next week. Cuba? That's the last line on this thing here. He's going to go visit Cuba and see about...
Maybe because he's maintained his empire for a long, long time down there.
Still, he's not a nuke power or anything. I mean,
I don't know. Close to, maybe
he's
coming
like 100,000 miles away. And
the North Korean leader's going to Cuba. That's what they said.
No, the Abe, Japan.
Oh, Japan.
Japan is going to go visit with Raoul or something like that. To talk about the North Korean problem. That's what it's. Now, it could be a misprint, or somebody got a couple of things jumbled up there, but that's what this article says is that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will seek Cuba's help in responding to North Korea's nuclear and missile programs during a rare visit to Havana next week.
Vacation. I don't know. It
If you
doesn't
were
make any
Jack,
sense to me.
why would you not vacation to Hawaii, which is practically a stone's throw?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
In related compared to Cuba.
yeah. I don't know. That doesn't make it. That line doesn't make any sense to me either.
Okay, so dismiss.
Well, one thing I want to point out before we move on: did you see that North Korea has outlawed sarcasm?
Yes, I saw that, and of course this. I did see that, and I didn't read any of the comments, but
I checked Snopes and didn't find anything.
okay.
It could be real.
Well, of course, here's the deal: no sarcasm here.
Right. Well, exactly. Exactly. I got this picture up of him looking at 3 of his generals, and they all have a different look on their faces.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to try to imagine which one of them he thinks is being sarcastic.
I tell you, I'd be scared to death because they
man.
they hung or shot that guy who was second or third in command over there. One of
Yeah,
the-
apparently he's killed a bunch of people. And
Well, the guy had kind of fallen asleep during one of his speeches, and so he, that was that. It just reminds me, I've been in something called big group before, where you're afraid to say anything. I mean, for fear that you're going to get
they
left.
didn't kill you though.
No, they didn't kill you, but it was just short of that. Anyway, I'm done with that.
Okay.
We're getting here towards the end anyway.
Yep.
And I'm gonna try it on you. Oh yeah. I got my mojo working, baby.
And we're back.
And we're back. Jimmy Doane Show. Last item here, real quick, see if we can get through this. This actually has ramifications on 2 or 3 different levels. Ford has decided to move all of its small car production to Mexico from the U.S. Ford's the chief executive, Mark Fields, said Wednesday that all of the company's small car production will be leaving the U.S. plants and heading to lower-cost Mexico, drawing another rebuke from Donald Trump, which figures. We have migrated all of our, and he says we've migrated all of our small car production to Mexico because it's less expensive. Trump, who is campaigning in Flint, Michigan, lead capital of the world, lead water capital of the world, on Wednesday called Ford's decision horrible. He has criticized Ford's Mexican investments for more than a year and vowed to pressure the automaker to reverse course if he's elected. We shouldn't allow it to happen. Now this, of course, is completely scary, because what are you going to do? You arrest the guy here, Mark Fields, or what? I mean, what do you mean?
Well, that's just political grandstanding.
Well, I know it is.
Right now, there's a big push. There's the big story is, all the manufacturing jobs have left. We got to keep them here. We got to bring them back. They're not coming back. We're not getting this.
Well, it's
happen.
interesting, as Fiat Chrysler Automobiles said they would realign their North American plants also to emphasize, but what they're going to do is they're going to emphasize truck and Jeep over car output. Both automakers are making the moves because U.S. consumers have turned away from traditional sedans and hatchbacks to SUVs and pickup trucks, which are manufactured in this country. So the United Auto Workers has said the number of auto assembly jobs would not decline because workers would be making SUVs and pickup trucks. Of course, the UA president did, of course, hold out the cloud behind the silver lining or something, and says there's a risk that if gasoline prices go up, that people switch back to smaller cars. Well,
Right. So now I have behind you the pizza making robot. And the reason I have that is because it's right related to what you just said, which is as soon as they figure out how to replace those workers with robots, then those jobs are going away anyway.
Well, now I just threw away. Let me just do this. This was another thing about cars. Peugeot has inked a deal with a company in California to do 3-dimensional parts to make their cars less expensive. I guess because some of the stuff can't be molded, and you can do it in a 3D something or another. It's 3D metal forming and so forth. So they said have a partnership with a U.S. 3D printing startup that would lead to cheaper production of the whole vehicle structures as well as parts for its models. Well,
you never know.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that we've seen this before, where you get the 3D parts and it just clamps on.
Right.
What do you need the workers for? The mold.
Right. Well, but what? Obviously, they've just illuminated there is that here's a new industry,
Right.
That and new technology,
New
and
technology.
new jobs, from and now we're stealing job from Peugeot,
Right.
You know, and there's some French brothers going, "What is this?" You know, I do not.
I'm the programmer too. I do 3D.
That's right, and but no, sorry, that's going to a couple kids in California.
Exactly. Just start instant billionaires. Okay.
That's right.
No, seriously. So that just shows you about what people know about trade and the companies. They got to stay in business. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I don't know
until they
about-
don't.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm done. We can sign out. This is been the Jimmy Doane Show. Counselor Curtis.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for stopping by. Leave us some comments if you want anything in particular that we should talk about. Let us know that as well, and we will look forward to coming back tomorrow. Another thing.
See you at 4.
Yep.
And I'm gonna try.
Or you'll see us.
Yeah.